Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Burke County Board of Commissioners pre-agenda meeting for Tuesday, January the 7th, 2025. I call our meeting to order. Note that all commissioners, with the exception of Commissioner Stroud, are present. County Manager, Clerk, Finance, we're all here. And our attorney, Mr. Lackey, thank you for being here. All right. Gentlemen, you've had the agenda for this meeting ahead of time. I will entertain a motion at this time to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That's 4-0. Presentations today, we have several. The first one comes from Foothills Regional Airport Authority. This will be presented by Brent. Have I seen Brent?
Guess he'll be here at the regular meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Well, gentlemen, you have that presentation or pieces of it in your package. So if you see anything there of question, be sure to give Brent a call, and he'll be glad to answer those. We'll look for him at our regular meeting. Without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Presentation item number 2 comes from Finance, the County Manager. A presentation of fiscal year 23-24 audit. And gentlemen, this item will also be presented in more detail in our meeting, but you have at your place a copy of the audit. I would encourage you to look at it. Mr. Manager, any word from you on that item?
I would just say that the principal partner from our audit firm, Thompson Price Scott Adams, will be here. He and the audit manager were able to meet with us earlier this week. Mr. Chairman serves on our audit committee, so we were able to meet and go through that in detail and get some questions answered. So certainly, to the extent board members have questions about the packet, happy to answer those if you have them. If not, Alan will be here in 2 weeks to go through in a much more detailed presentation those findings.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manager. And as Brian said, we did have an opportunity to briefly go over that with them as the committee, and the audit looks good, but there's lots of information within the audit. I would encourage you to look at it and talk to Brian or Margaret if you have any questions. Without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Item number 3 comes from the County Manager as well, departmental update from the EMS collections. Mr. Manager.
I'm momentarily looking for clicker. Here comes the clicker. This coming Thursday, we will, in our January department head, be kicking off our formal budget process. We're excited about that for the upcoming year. In December, we talked about the property tax impairment forms that were mailed out January 2nd as per the personal property listings. We talked about the home mitigation block grants and really trying to get a better idea of what the budget dynamic will look like moving forward. As part of that, it's always, I think, a good practice to reflect on how we're performing in the current year budget. Obviously, our budget year started July 1st, so we've just past the halfway point, and we're starting to get enough information to have some good projections on entering into the next budget season. So I wanted to give briefly an update on some of our re-engineering strategies as we dive into that. As we always customarily do, this idea of re-engineering and trying to maximize highest and best use for resource allocation is one of the board's goals, specifically under your fiscal stewardship focus area, with an idea of operating in a very lean environment. We know that, again, especially heading into the 25-26 fiscal year, we may see flat or decline in property values. For the first time in some time through the first 4 periods of this fiscal year, we were seeing a gross decline in sales tax. Some of that was due to refunds to nonprofits and governmental entities, but we also were seeing a slow in consumer spending. We expect that to change, primarily due to construction and hospitality as we enter October because of the storm impact and all the rooms from FEMA and those type things. But generally, if you extract the storm impact, I think we were seeing a slow there, And between property tax and sales tax, you're talking about 75% of our total general fund revenue. So the ability to examine and really scrub existing resources to repurpose in different ways is going to be the key and the goal to continuing to advance the Board of Commissioners strategic plan and to make sure that we're able to fulfill our services to our citizens in the most fair way possible. You've all seen this many times, but from an administrative plan perspective, we really continue to execute this three-phase strategy that we refer to internally as React, Rebuild, Rethink. React was all about evaluating the industry, our environment. When I first onboarded, we had a lot of conditions that I think required us to take a step back and develop some strategy. We then moved into this rebuilding stage where we focus largely on best practices and rebuilding foundation and focusing on culture and focusing on values. And now we continue to operate in this rethink phase, which is largely surrounded by how do we promote high performance through culture and through strategy so that we can ultimately serve our purpose as an organization, which is improving lives in Burke County. And that's really our goal. The better that we are able to execute our budget, our resources, the more that we're able to achieve high performance in all things that we do, the more of a benefit that we can be to our community. We know that high performance culture increases productivity. We know that it creates an environment of innovation. We know that people like to be part of something that's bigger than themselves and that is purpose-driven and that has a culture of really being focused on outcomes, and all of that reduces turnover. And then lastly, when everybody's pulling in the same direction, I think it enhances connectivity and allows us to hold each other accountable so that everybody's doing their best. So again, with the goal of trying to fine-tune what we do, trying to get better, trying to move good, better to best in all things that we do. So what is re-engineering? I say all that to say re-engineering is a critical component of our strategy as we move forward, not only for this year, but as we move forward together. Re-engineering is really simple. It's the restructuring of existing resources to connect those to the Board of Commissioners' highest priorities, as defined in your strategic plan. The idea is either through cost avoidance, revenue maximization, or efficiency enhancements, meaning lowering the cost per unit, we were able to reduce operational costs, reprogram those into a highest and best use way to improve outcomes. That's the goal. We had several strategies that you're all familiar with in this year's budget. I'll go through those, but I really want to highlight one that falls into that revenue maximization strategy, specifically for EMS central collections. Inside our solid waste fund, just to highlight a couple projects you all know that we have moved our MSW transport handling in-house. We began compacting our own cardboard at our collection sites, and we've also developed a scheduling strategy that allows us to eliminate overtime. Each of those produce either revenue maximization, cost savings, cost avoidance, or efficiency improvements. Our water sewer fund, for water loss, we're a purchased water system, and there's been a gap historically of the water that we buy versus the water that we sell. Similarly, on the sewer side, the sewer that we pay to have treated versus the sewer we're collecting and billing for, again, that gap, we're running an AIA study to try to minimize that and improve that system, and more to come on that as we approach your March work session. We talked about this back in November, but this was the economies of scale negotiated bulk discount and partnering with other public safety entities to do bulk radio replacement. Fleet management, we have about 215 total vehicles in our fleet, and largely they've been managed year to year, department by department, in a very solid way. So we're trying to be centralized and collective about replacement and about strategy and about really being able to program that out 2, 3, 4 years ahead of time. IT, very simple things like deploying iPads versus more traditional MDTs that have a 2 to 3x cost, and technology allows us to do those things, lower cost, higher productivity. So sometimes it's very simple, nebulous things that make a big difference. Managing overtime, having policies in place, having quality assurance systems that monitor that helps us to achieve those goals. On the health side, we've talked about managing our pharmacy spend, putting biometrics back in place. We have a health coach now that's helping navigate people and so that they can, take their appropriate medications and all those type of things to the extent that they can change health behaviors and ultimately, hopefully have lower health costs. So all of those are strategies that are in process now. And what I'd like to do as we go through the budget process is systematically update you on each one of those on how it's going. Today, I'd specifically like to highlight EMS billing. So just as a reminder, historically, we have partnered with a company called ESMC. And there's multiple companies that do pre-hospitalization transport billing. ESMC is probably the best in the industry, and we've had a relationship here in Burke County with them for some time. Generally, the way that those contracts work is that they receive information through technology. Our medics do something called a PCR that then gets transferred to the billing company. They send the bills out, collect, and then they keep a percentage, roughly 6 to 7% of net collections as their fee for service. Over time, what we had noticed is that revenues had flattened. We thought that our collection percentage was a bit non-competitive. We thought we could do a little bit better in the amount of bills that we collect. I think it's fair to say about 65–70% of our total bills either go to Medicare or Medicaid. So these are public insurance companies, and then there's obviously private insurance companies that we're also billing to. Very few of hospital transport bills and ambulance bills are through private pay. So the vast majority of this is either money we're going to collect to offset our costs or not. We also saw that increasing contract cost. We felt like we had limited control to make innovative changes to try to do this better. And so we made this predictive analytic to say, what if we did this in-house? Who are a few counties that do this in-house across the state? We looked at Cleveland, Charlotte, and Stanley, and you can see the revenue per transport was well over $300. And we looked at some counties around us that all partnered with ESMC, by the way, and you can see the differential in, I think Caldwell may do that in-house with a billing support, but much less lower revenue per bill. So our goal was to begin to transition that, which we've now accomplished, and I would like to be very, very pleased with the outcome thus far. Obviously, we've taken, when you're halfway through the fiscal year, it's a good time to project the full amount, because you for the most part can simply double your expectations, assuming that there's nothing abnormal. So our projection at this point for collections through June 30 of 2025 would be $6.9 million. When you compare that to prior years, that's $1.8 million higher than last year, 1.4 higher than the year before. And you can see this average revenue per bill now at $370, where we were down in the 275, 280s. So largely we're seeing an increase in call volume. We're seeing a higher collection percentage. Obviously that's generating a higher cost recoupment, if you will. Still doesn't cover the full cost of EMS, obviously, but it's closing that gap and certainly helping offset some of the hurdles and challenges of buying ambulances and paying staff a competitive wage. We're also working on through the details. We have several hospital contracts. So for example, in Burke County, like many counties today in North Carolina, we have two physical hospitals, one in Valdez, one in Morganton. But on paper, they're the same hospital. They have the same ID number. So you can call I-40 or Highway 70 a long hallway. And what that means is when someone goes to Valdez, often to the emergency room, that admission will end up in Morganton, and they have to be transported via ambulance while still under the custody patient care of the hospital. And we do those. Historically, that's been a fixed fee. We're working through renegotiating that so that it's more on a cost per unit. We think that's going to be very fruitful and more indicative of our true cost of doing that service. Also, interfacility transports to like nursing homes, hospitals that may be higher level of care outside of our community, making sure that we have the appropriate systems in place to recoup those costs as well through contracts. And also having this function in-house gives us what I call authoritative billings. That would be things like debt set-off. Debt set-off is a statewide database that, as a government entity, we can upload amounts owed to. And so if someone set to receive some type of state dollar. So they play the lottery, or they get a state income tax refund, but they owe Burke County money. The money that's owed to Burke County is netted out of that refund. So if someone, for example, played the lottery and they had some type of return, but they owed, the state of North Carolina or Burke County $5, that would be netted out before they get their money. So that's just an example of another way that I think that we can increase that revenue source. And then also garnishments, similar to any other type of garnishment, we have the ability to attach for dollars owed. And again, most of the time, this is corporate insurance companies, not individual folks. But I think all of that will help really make this a more beneficial strategy as we move forward. So the executive summary, Mr. Chairman, is that one of our many reengineering strategies for this year, I think, is helping provide some budget flexibility that we need to continue the momentum that we have on your strategic plan, even given the economic hurdles that we may face in the next little while. Happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manager. Any questions for Brian on this item? Nope. Madam Clerk, I'll note that Commissioner Stroud did join us during that presentation. Okay, this brings us on, thank you, Mr. Manager. This, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. This brings us to item number 4, scheduled public hearings, Community Development Zoning Map Amendment ZMA 2024-10, and public hearing. This will be presented today by our Deputy County Manager, Planning Director, Mr. Glines. Afternoon, Alan.
There we go. Sorry about that. For your review for the public hearing will be a request to rezone 2 properties owned by John and Rita Yunt. And these properties are located in the eastern side of the county off of Cape Hickory Road. The 2 parcels total approximately 1 acre, about 1 acre, and they're already platted. The request is to change that from general business to residential 3 zoning, and this would permit single-family housing out there. These parcels are part of a business called 72 Degrees Heating and Air Conditioning Company, and they operated there for many years, and they owned quite a few parcels around that. Well, when they retired and closed down, they started selling off these extra tracts. So back in 2003, we had another section of these that came in. Someone bought like 5 acres or so, and they asked for that to be rezoned, and that was on the back side. So the Yunts have picked up these 2 tracts and would like to rezone it for the purpose of adding housing out there, 1 house per lot probably. For all rezonings, this is a map amendment. We take all those to the planning board, and they're always considered by the planning board first, and then they come to you all with their recommendation, or up or down, whether they support it or not. So we've done that. And we always consider the future land use map, which is based on our comprehensive plan for Burke County. It often tracks closely with the current zoning, but in general, this area is compatible with that requested change. And so if it was approved, we would be adjusting that future land use map to match up to infill housing, is with how that would go. So at the hearing itself, there were no members of the public came to that meeting with the planning board. And so the planning board discussed it and voted to support and recommend that change with a vote of 6-0. So I can answer any questions for you if you have.
All right, thank you, Alan. Any questions for Alan on this item? All right, seeing here none, Alan, this item will remain on the agenda. Second item, also from Community Development, text amendment ZTA 2024-03, temporary dwellings. Mr. Glines.
Thank you. So our office, we manage the permitting for housing, and we look at damage assessments and those sorts of things that have occurred since Hurricane Helene. And it became pretty apparent that we were going to have a fair number of requests for temporary housing going on the same tracks of damaged homes. And our ordinance today does not have any provision for allowing that, even though we were likely to see where FEMA would bring houses in and these FEMA trailers and other type units onto a site and would want to have them placed there temporarily while that home's being repaired for the homeowner. So looking this issue over, we reached out to the North Carolina Planning Group that is online, and we found some. Our western counties don't have as much experience, thankfully, with this type of topic like the coastal counties do. So the coastal counties, a lot of them have this in place already. And so we reviewed some of their ordinances about how they handle temporary dwellings like this. And so we've taken that into account with this text amendment. So in this proposed draft ordinance, a temporary dwelling could take the form of an RV, a recreational vehicle, a camper, a FEMA-provided unit, or similar unit. Sometimes churches are providing trailers and that sort of thing, or even a primitive sleeping accommodation, which has just been recognized by the state building code in North Carolina. That could be tent or an insulated shed without electricity. The temporary dwelling used, we would tie that to an active building permit for repairing a home or during the process of building a new home or accessory dwelling on the same tract of land. So it's tied to the building of a home, a permanent dwelling unit on a parcel, and it would help folks in that meantime. In a lot of cases, there's no place for people to go when they're building or trying to repair or renovate. They're plugging in a gas-powered type of device to get power in their house. So it's a pretty tenuous situation. We'd like to try to make this work for folks who are on a permanent basis, meaning that it's not just tied to a hurricane event or some other type of emergency like that, but it could be helpful long-term. Now, if it's tied to a building permit, it allows us to give it a time limit. We don't want people to permanently live in a recreational vehicle. They're not designed to be a permanent residence. So we'd like to have some way to pursue that with a building permit for the home to push that along and close it out at some point in the future. We did take this to the planning board. I'm sorry, was there a question?
I do have a question. How does this go along with the building inspection department as far as temporary service poles and those kind of things?
It could tie in with it, especially if that home is the site of a permanent residence at some point, like an active permit's underway. We often set up a temporary service pole when people are building a home. It's that early power. So it allows people to kind of build their home and have power to kind of run the equipment and whatnot that are being used to build the property, build the house.
So if someone's going to get a temporary home, they would automatically be approved for a permit for a temporary service, and we would go out and inspect that.
Yeah.
Power company would come out and hook it up.
That's right.
Whereas now you can't do that.
Well, people get temporary power. It's a common occurrence with a new build today.
With a building permit.
Yeah, with the building permit, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're not going to say, yes, you can do this, but then suddenly there's going to be a problem with them getting some kind of temporary power.
Correct, right. We won't have an issue with that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I would just like to add, is this going to be a stepping stone for something permanent? Is that what you're saying? They can only stay in this temporarily for a certain amount of time, and it's just to help them out now, and then it needs to turn into something else. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Yes, sir. And it's tied to a building permit. So a building permit is to construct a unit. In some places, like we just looked at this R3 request, R3 is our flexible residential district. You can build, you can utilize a single wide manufactured home, a double wide, stick built home, modular. Those type of options are all there, but this would be tied to one of those getting permitted and, a permit being applied for. The planning board did review this. We talked about it a lot. We spent probably an hour on the topic, and they were, want to understand how it would work. And what the benefits would be to our community if we allow this. And so basically the form you have in front of you is the form that they recommended come forward.
So Alan, during this process, it looks like this would be not exclusively designed for a hurricane or a disaster like that, but would allow temporary dwellings or lots of other uses during the building or rebuilding of a home.
Yes, sir.
How do we deal with environmental concerns, septic, all this kind of thing?
Well, they'll need those very same things in the build of a permanent residence. They need, the second item after they get after a zoning permit for a new home, let's say, is they start working on that septic analysis. So that's the first thing that gets kind of approved on a site, really, is the septic facility, if you will. And it's tied in the construction process with that. Obviously, someone who has a FEMA trailer coming in on an existing site, they can tie right into that existing septic. If they're repairing a home, they can tie into that existing system. But those newer, someone coming in, it'll have to be like an RV that's self-contained for a while before they would, be able, they couldn't just, not have a system in place in that case.
Yeah, that's where I was going with, would it be required that the septic system be in place for them to connect to, or would they be allowed to live in an RV that would have a contained?
Yeah, I think they would have several options, because we see so many different situations out there, different scenarios that would come about. But obviously, if they're starting with, just a vacant parcel, it's probably going to be an RV. That's what they're going to have for the duration, until that septic tank is brought online.
Okay. Any questions on this item?
Hey, Alan, I'm glad to see that we're doing this now. I was a little disappointed throughout the disaster area, and I'm in a lot of other counties as well, to see that we didn't have something in place, because we're almost 4 weeks into this, or 4 months rather, by the time we have our regular meeting, and a lot of folks really suffering, trying to figure out what to do because they couldn't, navigate that process. But, I noticed in there that you were talking about being tied to the rebuilding of another dwelling, permanent dwelling. Should we have some kind of provision maybe? I guess what I've seen is in some areas, some of the land has been so destroyed, and maybe not so much here in Burke County, I'm not familiar with the specific parcels, but where the river's really taken the land.
Yeah.
And so what if those folks need to be able to set up a temporary shelter, whether it be an RV or some other shelter by FEMA or something, somebody built them on a friend or family's property, so that, that kind of negates you trying to, or us trying to track that through the, our system, but, is there some provision that we might consider that, hey, these people right now are going to have significant work on their land before it's even possible to put a temporary structure there? Just a thought.
Yeah. The challenge of that is if it's separated from the tract of land, we don't have a way to really tie them together from a permit standpoint. And that would be somewhat of a challenge to make that happen. I think the number of, riverside properties that were kind of washed out, it's a smaller number. It's a fairly small number, I believe.
Just trying to think ahead,
Yeah.
since we're just now getting to this almost 4 months later.
Yeah.
So that maybe if we have some major disaster and there is a reason that somebody can't put a temporary shelter, maybe a tornado hits and every tree falls on their land, and it's going to take time, and they need a place to live for 3 or 4 weeks while crews come in and cut the trees enough to put an RV on their land. Just something I think we should consider thinking about.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Other questions, comments? All right. Seeing here none, this item will remain on the agenda. Thank you, Alan. All right, this brings us to item number 5, consent agenda. The first item on that is the Board of Commissioners resolution adopting a code of ethics. Gentlemen, this is a somewhat of a routine item. You've had that code of ethics in your package. Be happy to entertain any questions about that, but This is an item that we routinely assign from time to time as we have change in the commission to be sure everybody's on board with our code of ethics. So look that over. If you have any questions, be sure to let us know. We'll have that ready for signatures at our regular meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I did make a few notes on that, mostly grammatical errors. Should I just turn those in? Is that the best way?
Yeah, you'll just give Madam Clerk that
Okay.
information. She'll straighten that out. Anything else on that item? All right. Without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 2 comes from the clerk, appointment to the Adult Care and Nursing Home Committee. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to appoint Kathleen Andrews to the Adult Care and Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee, seat number 6, for a 1-year term ending January 15, 2026. This committee visits and enforces the patient's Bill of Rights for adult cares and nursing homes in Burke County.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any questions on this item? Seeing here none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 3, also from our clerk, reappointments or appointments to the Local Emergency Planning Committee. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to remove the names of Pete Mentor and Mike Willis from the LEPC roster due to their retirements and thank them for their service. It's also a request to make some appointments, appoint Alan Glines, seat number 1, Robert Bishop to seat number 4, and James Robinson to seat 14. It's also to make some reappointments, to reappoint Ronnie Rector to seat number 7, Charles Conley to seat 10, Spring Williams Bird to seat 13, and Jeffrey McDaniel to seat 15. And the terms are listed in your packet.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any questions on this item? Seeing here none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 4, clerk appointments to the Morganton Board of Adjustment. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to appoint Johnny Carswell to the Morganton Board of Adjustment for the ETJ, seat number 1, regular, to complete a term ending June 3rd, 2028. The extraterritorial jurisdiction is a small area just outside the city limits of a municipality, and we appoint some folks to their board to represent that area.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any questions on this item? Seeing here none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 5, resolution removing a plat review officer for the city of Morganton. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to remove Logan Hanchett as a plat review officer for the city of Morganton due to an employment change. I will need to tweak the draft resolution slightly. Morganton did not adopt a resolution at their meeting, so they sent us a letter. So we'll just make that minor modification to the resolution, that it was a letter instead of a resolution.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any question on this item? Seeing here none, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Item number 6 comes from our Sheriff's Office, approval of jail medical plan. This will be presented by our Sheriff. Afternoon, Sheriff.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Mike?
Thought it was on. How about now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Well, thank you for allowing me to be here with you today. According to North Carolina General Statute and North Carolina Administrative Code, the governing board is required to adopt a jail medical plan. And I can tell you that the one that we have had has been outdated. And the Sheriff's Office, along with the Burke County Department of Health, Danny Scalise's crew has helped us, and also our medical provider, IMS, Dr. Pylan's group, who we have a contract with them to provide medical services at our jail, has worked to update our medical plan. And that thing covers everything from mental health issues dealing and handling chronic and communicable diseases, medication administration, and emergency care. So I think they've done a good job in updating that thing. We're asking you all to approve that and allow the chairman, who is one of, I think, 4 signatures that go on that medical plan, to act on that.
Thank you, Mr. Sheriff. Gentlemen, that's some riveting reading all through there, and I would have to agree. It's work well done. Appreciate the efforts there. Any questions on this item? We don't think about it often, but when we have folks in our custody, they require all the same kind of care that you and I do, 24/7, 365. And so this manages to take care of that. So.
That's right. If my son or daughter or brother, mother, if they're in the jail, I'm going to be taken care of just like anybody else. Thank you.
All right. Without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Item number 7, coming from the Tax Department, release refund report for December 2024, presented by our administrator, Mr. Bridgers. Afternoon.
Members of the commission, for the month of December, the report for refunds and releases was, report amount is $9,229.15. The rebuild amount was $4,869.85. A net release of $4,359.30, and there were no refunds. For the vehicles refunds over $100, the total was $244.72.
All right. Thank you, John. Gentlemen, you have that information in front of you. Any questions on this item? Seeing and hearing none, this item will remain on the agenda. Thank you, sir. That'll take us on to tax collection report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For property tax, year-to-date collected is $45,202,848.02. That is 82.5% of the budgeted amount, with a balance to collect of $9,590,330.98. For motor vehicle tax, for the year-to-date, we have collected $2,787,193.37. That is 54.91% of the budget amount, with a balance to collect of $2,289,050.63. Current year taxes is, year-to-date collected is $47,990,041.39. That is 80.16% of the budget amount, with a balance to collect of $11,879,381.61. For delinquent taxes, year-to-date collected is $371,188.45. That is 53.03% of the budget amount, with a balance to collect of $328,811.55. Penalties and interest, year-to-date collected is $161,803.36. That is 49.18% of the budget amount, with a balance to collect of $167,196.64. For the total levy, the total levy for the year is $68,819,143.88. With year-to-date collected is $45,202,848.02. The balance percent collected is 70.83%, with a balance to collect of $18,616,295.86. Any questions?
All right. Thank you, John. Any questions for John on this item? Seeing here none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Brings us to item number 6. Thank you, John. Items for decision, we have no items for decisions this month. That brings us to reports, item number 7. First item is from our Director of DSS, monthly operation report. And he's flanked by Amanda and provide assistance as well. Afternoon, y'all.
Good afternoon. We're here to give you our monthly departmental report, starting with a little bit of overview of personnel. We mentioned in our last report just sort of the growth in full-time personnel we've experienced in the last several years, but also wanted to mention that we also have 15 part-time personnel who do a variety of services. One of the most impactful part-time positions we've been able to add in the last several years is the addition of 10 after-hour support specialists. We mentioned last month that we oftentimes have children who have to spend the night in the agency. And when that happens, we have to have 2 people with them at all times. One of those has to be a child welfare worker. So prior to having these part-time folks, that was requiring 2, daytime social workers who worked all day and then having to work all night. And you can imagine in a pretty short amount of time, that has a pretty takes a toll on staff. So the addition of these 10 people have kind of allowed us to cut that in half, where we still have to have 1 child welfare worker there at all time, but also these after-hours folks have provided tremendous support and really helped us out over the last year since they've been added. In terms of our current openings, we are going through a little bit of an uptick in openings, in the work that we do, where you can't really shut the front door. Sometimes when you have a separation and that work gets pushed down to someone else, it can have a tendency to snowball a little bit. So we've seen a little bit of that, but we've been working hard along with HR staff to try to aggressively recruit, get positions filled as quickly as possible. And you can see for the month of November, there was 4 separations. All those were voluntary separations, and with the addition, then we had 5 hirings, and those hirings are listed in there. So we're continuing to work each and every day to get those positions filled, and a number since this report was created, a number of those have received conditional offers or final offers as well. Amanda's going to talk through some of the economic services data with you, and then I'll finish up from there.
Sure. Good afternoon. In economic services, we have an MOU that we have to that we're required to meet the data every month. And in this report, you can kind of get an idea what those percentages are. During the hurricane, September, October, and November, our MOU was wavered. So a lot of these areas that you see, we still achieved, and so I put that on there. But also in those wavered areas, it's not held against us in any way that we didn't meet those performance measures. And so, but overall, we continued to perform quite well. Another thing in economic services was our child development, our child care subsidy program. We went through an audit, and they finally finished up in December, and we finished with a 98.06, which is very commendable. The supervisor has been with the agency for 18 years, and her name is Tina Mosley. She did a fantastic job during this as well. And we had 0 financial corrections, so there was no payback to the county. Corey is going to kind of go over some of the other things that we have coming down the pipeline, but 2 of the programs in economic services is in our energy programs. And we have the energy disaster program, so it is really for those that were impacted. I'm not going to go through the list because he's going to do that in a little bit. But we do have 2 programs that are going to be starting in January upon your approval. And one will be the Energy Disaster Program, and one will be Energy Rental Assistance Program. And again, both of these programs are only for those that were impacted by the hurricane. For some of you, this is the first time that you got to see some numbers and those that we serve. This is Food Nutrition Services. So this is our food stamp program. If you can see, this is a list of all year. In November, it shows We served 11,981 recipients in Burke County. This is just in Burke County. And we gave out almost $3 million in F&S benefits in November. So you can see too, September, October, November, the impact that the hurricane made. So this also includes some of those DSNAP benefits. But these are benefits at the very end that we give out monthly. This does impact our community, and it's an economic boost to Burke County. And this is the Medicaid numbers as well. So we serve about 29,000 people in Burke County. That's a lot. It's about a third of our population. So this just kind of also gives you some insight as to some of our Medicaid numbers. I won't go through each and every one of them, but it is broke down by family and children. So we have family and children. We also have the adult. And so this kind of gives you some numbers there as well. One of the things commendable about Medicaid is if you look over at our performance measures, all that in green, even through everything that we've been through for the whole year, our Medicaid staff has maintained those MOUs the whole entire year. Now I'll turn it over to Corey.
Thank you. Just a little bit of information related to child welfare. There's currently 182 children experiencing foster care and roughly 287 open CPS cases, which from January to November, so for 11 months out of the year, we had 1,526 CPS reports that were received. And you can see the November CPS data. There's 116 reports in the month of November, 17 screen outs. 95 of those reports were screened in and 4 were screened for other counties. And also in the month of November, we had four children enter foster care and then 8 children exit foster care, which you always want to see that bottom number bigger than the top number. So 8 children exited care, 5 through adoption, 2 through reunification, and 1 child aged out of foster care, so turned 18. And then in terms of adult services, we're currently serving 56 wards, and we have 17 wards who are being served through a contract we have with a third-party provider. We have 48 recipients in our special assistance in-home program. That's a high number for the one individual we have who's providing that service. The state recommends 25 to 30, so that individual is working hard. Then we also have 145 people currently receiving the CAP, or Community Alternatives Program. We have the ability to serve up to 188, and those referrals are maintained by the state, so our staff are ready and willing to get up to 188. And then Amanda touched on this briefly. So as a result of the hurricane, the state, through the General Assembly, allocated money to the 25 affected counties and then additional money to the 15 most affected counties, which we fell into. The total allotment for Burke County is a little over $900,000, and that's broken down into 3 different pots, and we'll go through each one to kind of tell you what that money is going to be used for. The first is Essential Services Fund, which there is an allocation for child welfare of $263,000, and then for adult services of $131,000. And essentially this money can be used to offset basically like normal day-to-day expenses that either families or adults that we're working with experience as a result of the hurricane. That could be through loss of personal property, or the need for medical services as a result of it, or housing assistance, or anything that kind of is a day-to-day cost. We can use this money to help offset those needs. The second pot of money is rental assistance, and Burke's allocation was $73,000. This is rather self-explanatory funds. This money can be used to help with rental assistance for people who were impacted by the hurricane. And then lastly is energy assistance funds. This is similar to the energy that we normally provide. This is just additional funds that can be used to offset costs associated with the hurricane, and Burke's total allocation for that is roughly $441,000. So you can see here the amounts broken down, with the total amount of just over $900,000. This money will, like I said, it was given to the 25 counties and then more to the 15 most impacted, and it will continue to be monitored by the state. And as counties use or don't use this money, more money will be moved around and reallocated to other counties that have a greater need, or if counties aren't using their money. And then the next step for you guys would be to approve the receipt of this money and allow us to start using these funds to help folks in the county. I think that.
All right, thank you, Corey. Any questions for Corey or Amanda on these items?
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
I think-
just briefly, I think if the board, Corey was presenting the details of this funding allotment and how it may be allocated, but if the board is agreeable and wishes to keep it on the agenda, since the DSS Director's report isn't presented at the regular meeting, we would ask that you consider moving it to the consent or to an item for decision for the regular meeting, at the budget amendment itself that he just talked about.
Correct. Just before we do that, let me make a comment or two. In the monthly update letter, very first thing in our package, the second sentence has got something fishy. Just need to, it's grammatical, just needs some work there.
Okay.
On the open positions, we got some data underneath those that talks about citizens per social worker and those kind of things compared to other counties. I played around with the numbers a little bit, and I presume that those graphs are based on the number of positions we have approved.
Yes.
Not necessarily the number of folks actively working.
Correct.
So our ratios are, actual ratios are somewhat more than the charts show, and that leads to my next question. What is our status on getting a lot of these positions filled?
I mean, I think we're making progress. I mean, I think we interview every day. I mean, I don't know what, I can say that I know in child welfare, I think there's 12 in child welfare. I think 6 of those have at least conditional offers, and then there's 4 or 5 interviews set up in between now and next week. So if you do the math, it is possible that those 12 could be, at least a conditional offer be extended by the end of next week. So I do think we're making progress. I think in Medicaid, the applicants have been a little slower, but I think that they do have interviews scheduled. We're continuing to work every day to make sure that we get the positions filled.
So we do have applicants, and that seems to be moving forward.
Yes,
Starting to.
the applicant pool is slower. I mean, I think this is not just an issue in Burke County. I think the applicant pool at DSS is slower, but I think we are continuing to get applications, but not at the rate that I think we did a couple years ago.
All right, any other questions before we discuss the motion? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to back up about the kids that age out of foster care when they turn 18. What happens to those kids? Where do they go? Are they local people or?
So, well, it depends. I mean, they can be placed anywhere. There is a foster care 18 to 21 program, which is a voluntary program where children can choose to sign on to continue to receive foster care services, but essentially that's more of an economic benefit where they're paid a stipend each month and they get some little level of support from our foster care 18 to 21 social worker. But if a child ages out and chooses not to participate in extended foster care, then they're just like anyone else who turned 18 and left mom and dad's house and don't want any more help. They're kind of on their own. I think when children age out of foster care, that's a failure of the child welfare system. Like that those are kids that we said they weren't safe in their house and we weren't able to find permanents for them. I think that's difficult, and those kids tend to have not great outcomes, and I think that's why the 18 to 21 program was created. But it is, I mean, that's a challenging population for sure.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Corey, I just have one question. What efforts or what kind of things are we doing to find foster parents in the community?
Sure. I mean, we do. We often will have tables at community events. So, like the Morganton Festival, we'll have a table, or there's been a couple events at churches where our recruitment folks have spoken, or it's typically stuff like that where people will say, "Hey, we're having this event. Do you want to set up a table?" And we'll participate in that. Or if they invite us to speak at a particular function, we've spoken at some Rotary clubs in the past about the need for foster parents. Advertisements.
Thank you.
Other questions?
In terms of personnel, 12 positions, were those vacated? Can you give us a sense of why those 12 positions are open?
Sure, 12 was in child welfare. I would say we had a change in our program manager over CPS in the last several months, and I think anytime you have a change in leadership, you have a change in expectations, and that leads to turnover. And like I said, we do tend to see a snowball effect at DSS where, because we can't shut the front door when one person leaves and their caseload gets dispersed to their peers, that person beside them that was kind of at the end of their rope and now they've got 5 extra cases, when they were like, well, maybe I need to look for something else too. And it can be sometimes difficult to stop that snowball. And I do think that's part of it, is a couple people left during that transitional time. And also there was some promotions in the supervisor, which creates openings and workers. And then that, if 2 or 3 people get promoted to supervisor, their workload gets dispersed. I think that is that's the primary reason in child welfare. I think we have seen a lot of stability in foster care where they've had a stable program manager, stable supervisors for some time. We have way less openings in that area, but I think some of these things are just cyclical where they kind of come in waves.
Are we conducting exit interviews? Is there?
There is exit, HR can exit interviews.
I think we're also finding, I know in economic services, we're finding that people are leaving that type of work as well. It is very demanding. You have to have a passion for people, and you have to have a passion for helping people that maybe you don't always just get the pat on the back when you help them. And people are, we have seen an increase in people just leaving that type of work. So it's not that they're going to another county, it's not that they're going to another, like a hospital or even a school, they're just leaving that work. I had a supervisor last week who left because, she had some things she had to take care of at home, which is fine. But it wasn't because of anything that we're doing necessarily at our DSS. It's just that, again, it's high demand and it's hard work.
All right, thank you. Gentlemen, we've got this back to the emergency funding related to Hurricane Helene. We need to approve these 3 areas. Madam Clerk, any reason we couldn't take action on that right now?
The budget amendment?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why you can't. We're in a, properly scheduled meeting.
All right, gentlemen, we've got this information. You've had a chance to look at it. I'll entertain a motion to approve this emergency funding related to Hurricane Helene.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. 5-0. All right, thank you very much.
I did have, there's one more slide, just as a bit of good news, just an update on our Christmas Wishes program, because I think it's really cool that, there was, like I mentioned, there was 187 kids, and we also were working on gifts for some kids who were involved with CPS. So roughly 200 kids and 60 wards, we were able to, through generous donations from the community and hard work of our staff, we were able to provide Christmas for that's almost 260 people. So I think that's really cool and a good thing to end on. So.
All right, thank you. Mr. Commissioner Smith
I
has a
got one question. How many children do we have that are like out of state? They're placed out of state?
Placed out of state, I don't know the exact number, but that is a very small number. Less than 10. Probably less than 5. I can think of 2, but I don't know that those are the only 2, so I don't want to commit to those 2, but it's a very small number. And usually those are treatment-based, like we have a child in Alabama who's there for treatment purposes, so that's where that child is placed.
All right. Other questions? All right. Corey, Amanda, thank you for the good work you're doing. Appreciate the presentation.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
would you all like to accept the report as presented?
I'll entertain a motion to accept this report.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion we accept the report.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That is 5-0. And that does bring us to item number 2, which is the approval of budget amendment number 8. That's all the same information that we just discussed, and that's a done deal. You good with that, Madam Clerk? All right. Item number 3, quarterly operation report from the Health Department. We'll hear from our Health Director, Danny Scalise. Afternoon, Danny.
I'll start by saying, the slides that I'm going to start with are to talk to you all about some of the disease numbers that we've seen in the county. And we have some good news to report in terms of how we're doing and things that we can affect here in Burke County. There we go. The slides that I sent in.
Gentlemen, there's a PowerPoint presentation in the supplemental items folder.
The graph that you see on there now, while they're getting that up, is the first thing that I'd like to talk about. So hepatitis, this is a graph on hepatitis A. When I was hired, we were the worst county in the state for hepatitis A. Most of it came from syringe sharing. And here we go. Excellent, thank you all. Same graph that's there. Today we stand as tied with a number of counties the best in the state. We went from about 62 per 100,000 to effectively 0. And to give you an idea, the number 2 county when I started was 30 something per 100,000, so we were almost twice what they were. Chlamydia, you can see the same thing. The charts that I'm showing you, the numbers are going in this direction. The dotted line is a trend line that shows in there. Gonorrhea, hepatitis B, hepatitis C. Syphilis shows a couple different things. The blue line that's got this turned down with the box on there is the one we want to pay attention to. That's primary syphilis. That's people who've just got it. Tuberculosis. HIV, we have such a low incidence of HIV here. The trend line shows up, but we're essentially at a flat level. If you saw that over a number of years, it would look just like it was a... and I think what you'll see from those and these two slides is that the things that we're doing in terms of harm reduction and health education are keeping those numbers down. Most of those diseases you see come from sexually transmitted infections or syringe sharing. I won't go into the graphic details as to what happens in those cases for everybody's. This you'll see, this came from the state DHHS. This is overdose ED visits for people with med or drugs with a dependency potential. You can see in the 2023 term, we were at 206. You can see in the top box there, 114 this time. Overdose visits in Burke County, 131 down to 72. We're seeing less deaths from overdose. We're seeing less overdoses presenting in the ED. Moving on to some of the more fun things. Some of you all came over when our WIC unit was given the Gold Award. USDA gives that out. They rank kind of where WIC units are. There are 62 in the country. Out of the 3,800 or so counties that received the Gold Award, we were one of them. You can see that a couple of the stats from WIC, breastfeeding initiation, which we all know that when mothers can breastfeed with their young, it has better outcomes going on for the rest of their life. You can see we've significantly increased that. We're one of the better ones in the state. And then the bottom number that I asked them to put on there is when WIC gives the benefits to the patients that use it, that money goes back into, so that's federal dollars that come in here. And you can see because of our WIC unit, $1.8 million, up from $1.3 million in 2020, are going back into the Burke County community. One of the more mundane and more just business-like things that we do is vital records. Last year we were number 11 in the state. Now we're sitting at number 3. We are one of the fastest in the state to turn around accurate vital records. So you can see that we had 978 deaths. Dare County only had 239. They were number 1. I think they kind of cheated by not having a lot of people die that year. I'd say that we're better than them. So we're very fast. We're very accurate. The other thing is we make sure that everything that's on that death certificate, when a family member, the birth certificate is one thing, but when a family member passes away, you have to have that death certificate to be able to do it, and it has to be right. So if there's something wrong on it, it can cause you not to get maybe something in closing out your probate, maybe something, it's just hard to tell what could be on there. So we make sure that we're correct, and we are one of the fastest in the state. So I think all of those are good news. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our strategic plan. We passed this about 18 months ago. Here's the mission, vision, and the values that we passed into that. All of you should have a copy. Commissioner Barrier and Commissioner Stroud, I believe we've given you all a copy. And the 3 commissioners who were here before you all were seated, I think we gave you, but if anybody wants a copy of it, we certainly can. A little fun stuff about what we do. You can see the different things the staff is doing, including added a picture of one of our staff members with Elmo. I thought that was a little bit of fun there. So in our strategic plan, these are the 6 goals that we have. Everything we do is around these 6 goals. If we don't have a way that we can tie something we're doing back to those 6, we don't do it. We cut it out. So you can see that we're trying to establish a culture there, be an employer of choice, which is something that's similar to what your all's is. We took the county commission's goals and we were very aware of that and mimic some of those in there. Mitigate substance use and promote mental health, be an academic health department, be a healthcare service provider of choice, and be a leader in environmental health. To talk to you about some of the things that we're doing, twice annually and sometimes more. Last year we did 4 times. We get together with the whole staff for training and purposes so that everybody is able to understand and communicate what they're doing. We just started a new quality improvement plan, and our staff some of the staff have already started with Lean and Six Sigma, and we'll be using those quality improvement techniques that were originally started in manufacturing and have since made their way into healthcare and government. We just reached out. There's a person with the NC State Extension here locally. I think they're in Buncombe County that does that. It'll help us to get better at what we're doing, be more efficient in practices, and worry about things that are from safety to finances. We do hold health ed training, so health education is the reason a lot of those numbers that you saw were going down. People are more aware of what they should or more likely should not be doing. We do health fairs. Our board members and the committee that's there. And then, of course, last year we were named a Healthy People 2030 champion, one of the designations that we have. To be an employer of choice, we started to recruit nationally. So when we recruit now, we use the American Public Health Association and the National Association of County and City Health Officials to help us cast that net out wide. We think we have a great product to sell here, that this is a great place to come and work. So we don't just say, who do we have in Burke County? We found that sometimes is a little bit limiting. We did hire an environmental health specialist late last year from Tennessee, so that was the first time that we were able to bring somebody in here. We do a lot of team building. Some of the meetings that we have together, we try to build team building into it, so it's not just a bunch of lectures that staff here. In 2024, I will say this every time that I can until it changes, we are the Health Department of the Year. Our peers said that we were the best for the innovative practices that we do, and you heard me briefly mention the USDA Gold Award. We're in the process of formalizing our internship, our practicum program. So we are like a teaching hospital. We don't just do the work, but we also teach the next generation. It also helps us to determine what the next generation is learning and to come in there and to give us innovative ideas. So we have taken on interns and practicums in an MPH, which is the degree for Master of Public Health for public health. Students are required to do a practicum with someone who can oversee them. So I and a couple of the other staff members there are able to oversee that. And a couple of times we've had people who've come in, used Burke County data, used our stuff to help us create something or do something, and you all will start to see that now in the reports that we do. When we do our budgeting process, I don't know if all other departments do like that, but all employees have a chance to go into it. We meet with each unit within the health department and give them a chance to have a say-so as to what they're doing. So when we come to you and say, through the county manager, this is what we're requesting, every one of the health department employees had a chance to say, I think we should do this, or this is a waste, or I'd like to see more of our money in that. The county salary study that was done with Baker Tilly, we've created much more of a flexible working environment. We have taken the good use of the policy that you all passed a few years ago to permit employees to telecommute. And for some of the employees that we have, they really appreciate that you all have let them do that. Last year, we changed, for some reason, the Public Health Department had its own logo and its own this. So now everything that you see will now say Burke County Public Health, and will have the same logo and same colors. We went as far as to find the Pantone colors Kay found for us to make sure that our colors, the blue and green that you see there, matches exactly what you would see with the others. In order to mitigate substance use disorder and promote mental health, our opioid response, BCOR, Burke County Opioid Response, the OFR, we were the first in the state to do a team like this. So those are fatality reviews that are done by professionals, Burke County professionals in Burke County, to try to determine and make recommendations as to why this happened and what we could do to mitigate that from a policy standpoint. We're in the process of strategic planning. Naloxone distribution is something that we started doing maybe 18 to 24 months ago, and we've seen a precipitous decline in overdose deaths because of that. This drug saves people's lives. So the more of it we have out there, and we're doing it, the state has made sure that we've had a good supply of it without having to use any county funds. Some of you have attended the community forums that we've done, and we're talking about doing another one starting. We wanted to wait till we got after the first of the year, and sometime at the end of the first quarter of calendar year, we think we'll do another one. In terms of an academic health department, we have partnerships with the Gilling School of Public Health at Chapel Hill. CUSM is the Campbell University School of Medicine, Appalachian State, Western Piedmont, of course here, Lenore Ryan, and East Carolina. We take on nursing students from the community college, from LR, from ECU. We take on public health students from the others and medical students. So anytime you're in our building, there's a decent chance you're going to see students who are either rotating through or working with us on something. Faculty members also work with us on projects because so much of their accreditation is tied to experiential learning. So it allows us to have this expertise that we would never be able to afford without being a county the size of, say, Mecklenburg or Wake County. Training, research, and evaluation, we're able, when we do proper evaluation, we're able to look at you and tell you, yes, this is what we did and this is how well we did it. Think of it as keeping score in terms of a game. Our staff submit abstracts, have had papers published. We serve on multiple local, state, and national boards in terms of public health. The certifications that you see there, CPH is the highest in our profession that's board certified in public health. It is a mastery of that you've met all the requirements in a generalized version of public health. So think biostatistics, epidemiology, health policy, healthcare management, leadership. The CHES is for health education. CMOM is for a medical office manager. So the person who works that we would call like the practice manager in our office is certified in that and has gone through the training that's necessary to say that she's at the top of her field. Certified biller and coder. Multiple of our staff have been inducted into leadership fellowships. One of them was here in the state, the Bernstein Fellow, Ashley Jarrett, who's the Assistant Health Director, which is a very competitive and very prestigious fellowship. And then Jackson from over in our Environmental Health Unit was accepted into the Leadership Fellowship that was regionally done, and it's out of Emory University in Atlanta. It's the public health region. It's basically the southeast United States. So, and a number of our staff have guest lectured at some of these places. We're really trying to change the way that we are in a clinic. We've changed everything from workflows to what it looks like, our waiting room, how people come in, we're really taking a good view of what the experience is for a patient who comes in to our clinic and what it is that they see, how they get in and out. We're making use of the technology we have, so now we have the ability to communicate with staff via their cell phones. And when you come and check in at our WIC, we're about to spread this, we did a pilot with our WIC. When people come to check in, instead of coming to a person who may be busy doing something else, they just put their name on a tablet that's outside the window and it tells the proper person who's there. So we think we're going to roll that out for everything else because it's had a great deal of success. And then we further developed our street medicine and harm reduction programs, which work out in the community for patients who aren't able. People don't think about it. Burke County is a really big place. If you are an unhoused person and you may not be able to get in to the health department or get into any of the health care. It's kind of centralized around where we are. We've started to publish our environmental health data on social media and on the web. So if you want to know whether a restaurant is a good restaurant to go to or a bad restaurant to go to, you can look and see how they scored and why they scored that way. It's pushed on social media. We now have a lot more staff in terms of environmental health specialists. They're all kids. I'm having a tough time with that because we hired a couple of them out of college. And I never had children, so 20-year-olds I'm learning their lingo and things, but they're whip smart and they're going through their training faster than I had expected. And then HR helped us with creating a career ladder for those staff members. So in environmental health, you have different authorizations. Technically, the state does that, and they ask the county to do that process for them. That's technically what happens from a legal sense. And the state authorizes these individuals to work on their behalf in those. So if you hear somebody say they're authorized and on-site, they're the person who's doing the permitting for, say, a septic system. Someone who is authorized to do food and lodging, they're the ones doing restaurant inspections, things like that. So the career ladder gives incentive to those employees to go and get more of those authorizations. The more authorizations they have, the more value they are to us. It takes them a little while to do it, so by the time they get to that, one, they become a much better professional, they've given us back, and at some point they realize, hey, I kind of like it here. So the career ladder allows them to look for something and to work in an environment where they feel like there's something more to go to. That's become much more prevalent in public health in all different aspects of it, but environmental health is the first place that we tried it. Right now, you'll hear me, when you all talk to me, hear me talk about the CHA-CHIP process. CHA is Community Health Assessment. CHIP is the Community Health Improvement Plan. Every 3 years, UNC Blue Ridge and we are required to do a community health assessment. As we're permitted, we do it together as opposed to they do one and we do one. So we go out and ask people questions. Some of it's through surveys, some of it's through focus groups, some of it is through publicly available data, and put together an assessment of the health of the community and what the biggest priorities are. So the things that we do are driven from that process, and the CHIP, the plan, comes later on after that. We've made some updates to our facility with grant money that we had, so we realized that that building hasn't really been changed much since it was done in the 1970s. So I think all of you all have been in there and seen what we did, like with our lab, and then most recently, we put in a new waiting room with some of the grant money that we had so that people coming to our primary care practice or coming to our communicable disease practice are able to come and have a separate waiting space so that they feel a little more comfortable. We've started to work with our EHR to do a little more progressive billing, and we're seeing more money coming in. We're trying to reconcile that with Munis to make sure that the collections meet up with what they're saying, but we do see that more is coming there. Our communicable disease nurses will be in an enhanced role. That's a training that the DHHS does to allow them to do things that are a little greater scope of practice in terms of communicable disease. And we've put in an intent to apply for Project Public Health Ready. It was really interesting timing that we did that because we put the intent in before the storm came. That's all about public health preparedness. So we got a good lesson in that. We should have that. It'll also help us with our accreditation going forward. I went through that awfully fast, gentlemen. What questions can I answer for you?
All right, thank you, Danny. Any questions for Danny on his health report?
I got one. Where do we stand on our environmental health inspections? Are we behind? If we are, how far behind are we?
It depends on which one you're talking about, but the answer is yes in both, that we are behind. In terms of food and lodging, up until maybe 6 months ago, we had one person who was doing that. So if you look at the models that are there, we should have 10.5 people, 10.5 FTEs doing that, doing environmental health inspections. Right now, half of our unit are rookies. The problem with environmental health is when you hire those rookies, they have to go through all the process to get training. So for about the first 6 months or to a year, they're useless to us. They're just there to learn. I wouldn't say they're useless, but they're not able to do the inspections. There's probably an unfair assessment there. So we are behind in terms of both food and lodging and on-site. So we worked with the county manager to create a little process that he gave us a little bit of leverage on. So we have hired a few people on contract who are registered environmental health specialists in other counties who are going to be here helping to do some of the catch-up work that's there while our new people are training to get us back to where we were before. When I started here, almost all of the environmental health unit was close to eligible to retire. And a few of them decided it's time. And the pandemic didn't make that any easier for people in public health. So we were scrambling to hire people. In the state of North Carolina, there are roughly 1,300 people who are trained and available to do that job. To give you an idea of how we compete, Mecklenburg County has 104 of those. And they're consistently hiring for environmental health specialists. So it's always challenging to try and steal somebody from another county. So we were able to do that for one of our positions. We stole a young person who has not started, so I don't want to say what county they are from until we get them on board to not disparage other counties. But we were able to steal someone who lived a little closer to us than they did that other county and was looking for a new home and really liked some of the progressive things that we were using in terms of technology. So we have that one person, and then 3 of our staff members By April, Fools should be fully trained and ready to go and out doing the inspections. So we believe that by the end of the fiscal year, we should be in really good shape.
What, can you define a goal? What's best practice when it comes to restaurant inspections, for example? Is it, how often are they inspected, or how often should they be inspected? And do we have a timeline or a goal by which that we're going to be caught up?
So, as I just said, I believe that next fiscal year, we won't have any problems with it. This fiscal year, like I said, we had one person and basically 1.5 FTEs doing what should have been done by 5 people. So the state requires that certain levels of inspection are done by certain facilities. So it depends on the facility as to how often they're, I don't have that in front of me, but I can get that
I think
information.
schools, cafeterias are 4 times a year. Okay. What is a restaurant?
So once again, it depends on the restaurant. Certain restaurants are required multiple times a year, certain are 1.
Okay, and as far as septic tank inspections, are we in pretty good shape there?
So right now, we are a little behind, but we're at about the same place that every county around us is. So all the contiguous counties to us, including Burke County, are about 6 to 8 weeks behind. We are starting to improve that because we have hired these people who are contractors to help us do a little bit of catch-up. We believe that that's going to be able to get us to that point so that next fiscal year we don't have that. While we're doing that, we're training a few new people to do those septic inspections.
Hey, Danny, thank you for your time and your service. I just want to say, man, congratulations on all the awards. Anytime I hear awards here in Burke County for what we're doing, man, I'm all about that. And we're leading in a lot of areas, and man, that's awesome for the people coming here and the people looking to come here. And so good job there, and, thank you for your services and, everything.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Other questions, comments? All right, seeing here none. This will stay on the agenda, but could I entertain a motion to accept this as the Health Department report, please?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Those in favor signify by lifting hand. Thank you very much. This item will not move forward. It will be considered our Health Department report for the month, okay? Thank you, Danny. We have no other discussion items today. Let me just give you a few courtesy reminders at this point. County offices will be closed on January 20th in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day on January 23rd, 4th, and 5th. A number of our commissioners will be attending the Essentials of County Government in Winston-Salem. No county business, of course, will be conducted there. Upcoming meetings, February the 4th pre-agenda, 3 p.m., February 17th. Remember, that is a Monday. Regular meeting, 6 p.m. Still always looking for folks to help us with the Pledge of Allegiance and our regular meetings. If you know folks that can help us with that, please encourage them to do that. Any other reminders, Madam Clerk, that I'm missing? I believe we've got everything.
Do you want the regulars? Litter, foster adopt?
Yeah.
Yep.
I believe we got all that covered. Okay. Gentlemen, this brings us to item number 10, closed session. We do have a need for closed session today, and I would entertain a motion to go into closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318-11A 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and I'll entertain a motion for that.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Those in favor signify by lifting hand. We'll take about a 5-minute break, and we will resume in closed session, please. Thank you for all of you folks who have joined us today. Appreciate your attendance. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we had a proper motion to come out of closed session. Direction was given to the county manager, and no action was taken. With that information, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, sir.
All in favor, signify by lifting hand. Madam Clerk, 5-0. Thank you very much.